Charlamagne Tha God is not happy with CNN. Things got heated between him and anchor Anderson Cooper last night. Let's watch.
That president is a fascist. That's talking about putting people in camps. That's talking about, once again, terminating the Constitution to overthrow the results of an election. That's talking about, jailing his political opponents. Yeah. Like, that rhetoric doesn't scare people?
Well, we talk about this every single. This is what
I don't think
I've been talking about this every night.
I don't think y'all have enough conversations about it. I feel like I heard more on this network about is Kamala Harris black than I do about, Donald Trump being a fascist. Well, am I wrong, Angela?
Honestly, that's bullshit. I'm sorry.
Oh, I like that.
I'm not. Look, I'm a huge fan of yours.
Okay.
But to say that we're sitting around discussing is Kamala Harris black,
I've seen that. I've seen those roundtable discussions a lot. Now, that's bullshit, Anderson. For you to say that y'all don't have those conversations.
I've never asked somebody is.
Oh, I'm not saying
Kamala
you.
Harris
I said the network.
He said the network.
I don't think anyone I don't think any anchor on this network has been going around saying, "Is she black?"
Y'all have never had
we have had. Look, I'm sure we have had, nutty people or people who have strongly held beliefs who I may disagree with, who somewhere on some panel have said something, but.
Yeah.
I will just speak up for what I do on the show. I do believe it's important to get people different viewpoints as long as they're willing to have a legitimate conversation.
Charlamagne goes on to say Trump isn't being treated like a threat to democracy. Let's watch.
I think no network has honest conversations about Donald Trump. Nobody's had honest conversations about Donald Trump since 2016. I saw last night they were talking about, the double standard that exists between Donald Trump and the vice president. But it's always a double standard with Trump, whether it's with Hillary, whether it's, against Biden, now with Kamala. We talk about him being a threat to democracy, but we don't treat him like one.
I don't know what you've been watching, but I don't know of any Trump supporters out there or people who like him who are tuning in to me every night to try to get, to be validated in their opinions.
Over on Fox, Stephen A. Smith joined Sean Hannity's show, where he also called out the host for the way he was covering Trump. Let's watch.
Number two, I know you're not talking about somebody being lucid and cogent and enunciating their thoughts with clarity, and you're bragging about Donald Trump. We can't be watching the same stuff if that's what you're doing. You ain't going to do that today.
Now,
Lindsey Graham, hold it. Now, Senator Lindsey Graham is about to come on this show.
Let me tell you something.
That man can articulate himself very well. Not Donald Trump now.
I have sat with him for hour after hour after hour, topic after topic after topic, and he is so dialed in.
Really?
Look, it's funny. People try. This is like the latest argument. And meanwhile.
All right, let's start with this testy moment between Anderson Cooper and Charlamagne Tha God. I gotta say, I actually feel for Anderson Cooper for maybe the first time in my life. I don't think it's CNN or any news network's job to be spending the bulk of their airtime telling everybody that Trump is a fascist.
Well, I don't think that's what he was necessarily saying. I think he was saying that there was an unequal coverage, the way that the Daily Beast 2 weeks before the election decided to do a spread on Kamala Harris's style and that her pantsuits were out of style, rather than focusing in on, the fact that Trump's rhetoric has escalated towards the authoritarian tactics. Fascist or not, that's not their job to say, but they could report on it and say, this is unprecedented. It is unprecedented for a president to to go after his enemies and call them the enemies within and use the military against them. It is unprecedented for him to call to round up immigrants across the country, legal and undocumented, using the government resources. It is unprecedented to talk about body parts of a Gulf star on a stage. I mean, every day he's escalating things just a little bit more, whether it's delusional commentary or just really egregious rhetoric that is concerning towards the democracy of this country. I mean, I think that's what they're trying to say, is they're treating the two like they're equal. Like when Kamala Harris makes a gaffe or she loses her train of thought, that's the same as saying we're going to use the military to round up my enemies and undocumented people.
I mean, but they have to cover both campaigns, right? And it's not their job to editorialize, or at least it shouldn't be. And I think it's kind of weird, the assertion that places like the Daily Beast or CNN are somehow too nice to Donald Trump when these networks consistently have 90% negative coverage. I mean, there's a study from the Media Research Center that shows the three broadcast networks, NBC, CBS, and ABC, have been giving Trump 90% negative coverage since he first became a politician in 2015. So if you're going to say, like, okay, well, 90% negative against Trump and then 10% let's say probably 5% of that is negative towards Kamala, that somehow is them being equal. I think it's actually the opposite.
I think I'd be curious how this conservative research center is stating whether or not something is negative. What is negative? That's definitely, I mean, these are news networks, so I don't know what negative coverage means, but also Donald Trump puts it on himself. When he goes out and blasts his enemies and insults them, and then they literally quote him and report on it, that's him doing it himself. Kamala Harris isn't out there calling to murder her enemies, so of course she's not going to get that coverage.
When did Trump say he was going to murder his enemies?
Well, he's saying that he's going to use the military to round them up. All I'm trying to say is the rhetoric that he's using is being reported on, and he's doing that for a reason, because he wants to escalate the conversation and rile up his base because he can't expand his coalition right now. But that's at the detriment of really a smart, fair campaign where we should be debating ideas. And he's not. He's not debating at all. He's not debating ideas. He's not debating at all. And it's concerning for the state of media in this country.
I think you haven't been watching a lot of Trump if you say that he doesn't debate ideas or talk about ideas. I mean, there is a reason why voters say they need to know more about Kamala Harris's policies, and yet they seem to know exactly where Trump stands on the issues.
Well, Trump is, I've been watching Trump. You can't get away from Trump. Trump is on all day long, whether you want to listen to him or not. Second thing is Kamala Harris, voters aren't saying that anymore. The undecided voters that are about 1% that are saying that they need to know her ideas. There are people now making decisions about whether or not her ideas are something they want to stand for, or they're going to stay home. That's really what's coming down to these undecided voters, which is a small segment of the population. And she's been running for 3 months at this point. And so he has been running for the last 10 years. We know what he stands for. That doesn't mean they're ideas. We know what he stands for. He's not proposing any policies other than tariffs at this point, and rounding up undocumented people.
Well, he did propose ending taxes on tips and ending taxes on Social Security, both things that Kamala robbed for her campaign.
Okay, those are 4 ideas, but he still doesn't have extensive plans. He's been running for 10 years. He wants to bring manufacturing back, yet he had the opportunity to do so. In his administration, he didn't. The economy under his administration was worse. That's when inflation peaked. And so, I think he's running around in circles, escalating the conversation because he can't expand the base past the MAGA movement. And the MAGA movement is what is responding to this escalated conversation. I just don't understand how that's going to play out at the polls.
Well, you said that he didn't bring manufacturing jobs back. Prior to the pandemic, manufacturing jobs were up 150,000. They only dipped after the pandemic.
Not a lot, by the way. That's not a lot, Amber. That's not.
I agree. It's not.
He said it was going to be, several millions.
Well, I agree. It's not a lot, but it's more than have been created under the Biden administration. And inflation did not peak under Trump. It obviously
began under Trump.
Right, but it didn't peak under him. It peaked under Joe Biden at 9%. Still above where it was when Biden took office. It was at 1.9. And then you say Trump's not expanding his coalition. Why is he polling better with blacks and Latinos than any Republican president in modern history?
Well, the polling for blacks and Latinos is not actually better. It's at the numbers of 2016. They're comparing it to 2020. And yes, he is doing a little bit better with Latino men, but that does not mean he's winning with them. Just because he's polling a little bit better with men in all demographics, that's not really expanding a coalition. That means he's just getting a few more men. Expanding coalition is, bringing the Republican Party back, bringing those never-Trumpers back, winning with Republican women. For the first time in 24 years, Democrats are doing better with a conservative base, older voters over the age of 50 who are R+13 voters she's winning with right now. If I were Donald Trump, I'd tone down the rhetoric in these last 10 days, like his advisors have advised him, so he could win a few more votes. Because it's just the coalition right now is depending on the least reliable voters, young men.
I just think it's interesting. The Democrats used to always celebrate having young voters, and now they're celebrating having old voters.
We're also winning with young voters, Democrats.
But the margin has been reduced pretty substantially from the past 2 elections, right?
However, the majority of young women, by far, historically, they've always voted for Democrats, but the metrics are much higher now for women under 35, and they're more reliable voters than men under 35. So this is a real problem for Donald Trump, and I know that he knows this. Otherwise, he'd be expanding the coalition right now.
Final point on this, and a question for you, going back to this media coverage with Charlamagne Tha God and Stephen A. Smith. I mean, do you think that their strategy is really helping, though? I mean, they want to basically lecture voters about how evil Trump is. We've seen historically that actually has the opposite effect. People tune out from that because they've heard it all before, and they've already seen what Trump did in his first term. A lot of these claims that it's unprecedented are obviously not true. I mean, Abraham Lincoln suspended habeas corpus. We had a president literally put Asian Americans in internment camps, but we're bellyaching over deportations. Like,
well,
I just don't find it comparable at all.
Donald Trump also wants to reinstitute the Alien Sedition Act, which is alarming, and we should have learned from that. I think what they're doing is not lecturing voters. They're talking to the media saying, you can do better. You can do better in this moment as we're leading up into the election where you are they're sick of reporting on Trump. I think that's what's really happening, is that the opposite of Trump derangement syndrome is happening, is that the media does not want to talk about how this rhetoric is escalating as we near an election, and they're giving whole segments to Kamala Harris's, gaffes, which every presidential candidate has a gaffe. If you listen to Donald Trump's speeches, it's all gaffes. It's going off into weird tangents about things that he sees in the sky. I mean, it's never on topic. And I think what Charlamagne Tha God is saying is, you have a moment in this final stretch to really refocus and remind folks what's at stake here, because whatever side you're on, that's what voters are thinking about. They're not thinking about the day-to-day gossip.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. We have more on Rising after this.